Okay, so we're going to go over the study guide for your test tomorrow. So that'll be Friday. So make sure you go into your folder tomorrow and take that test. Okay. All right. A couple notes before we get started. The main formula you're going to use is your constant proportionality, which represents K, or K represents constant proportionality, which is Y over X, okay? So that means you'll take your Y and divide it by your corresponding X, and you should get the answer. Okay, or it can be the coefficient. Coefficient just means basically it is the number that is before your x, whatever is being multiplied by your x every time. Okay, so that is your coefficient, the number before your x. Or you can also get your constant proportionality when you are trying to, when you get your answer for one of something. So for example, 1 hour, or for one cookie, okay, the cost for one cookie. So usually you'll see the words each or per, which means one, okay, so that would mean one of something, okay. Now, if it is not already using each and per, the way you would find out is to divide the two numbers that are inside of your problem. That's how you find out what it is for one of something, okay. All right, let's get started. Number 1 says to determine if the representations below are proportional or non-proportional, okay? And it says just to put the P or the NP, so that way you don't have to write the whole word. Okay, so for this one, we are given a table with X and Y. Okay, so what you do is you take each of your numbers, and you're going to divide them, okay? Because really what you want to do is you want to see the relationship between your X and your Y. So you're taking those and dividing them by each other. If they give you the same number when you divide, then they are proportional. If not, then they are not proportional, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first one. So it's Y divided by X, okay? So it's going to be Y divided by X, right? That's what the formula says. And so take the Y, which is 5, and divide it by 2, okay? So the 5 would go inside because it is on top, and whatever's on top goes inside. Divided by 2, you would get 2.5, okay? So I'm just going to write that down in between those numbers, 2.5. And what you want to do is you want to see if you keep on getting 2.5. If you do get 2.5 when you divide all of them, then it is proportional. If not, then it's not proportional. So let's try our 9 divided by 4, right? So your Y is on top of your X, which is 4, and divide. So your 9 goes inside because it's on top. Divided by 4, you would get 2.25. So I'm going to write that in between those two numbers, 2.25. Okay, well, those numbers are different. So because they are different, it is going to be not proportional. So I didn't even have to go through the rest of them because I already found that 2 of them are different. And if that's the case, then it's not proportional. They'd have to be the same. Okay, let's try the next one. Same concept, so we're going to take each of them and find the relationship between the X and the Y. Okay, so we're going to do Y divided by X. So 1.5 and 3. Okay, so we're going to take those, and between that will be 2. Okay, so 2. Same thing, it's going to be Y over X. Okay, it's going to be 2. Just so you know, they are all going to be 2. Or even if you take it the other way, if you do take it the other way, you should find out that you'll get the same number. And because they're the same number, then that is going to be proportional. What I tell my students in class is I want you to see, okay, whether it is multiplying or dividing. You're trying to always go from your X to your Y. So for the first one, it goes from 2 to 5. Then it goes from 4 to 9. And then from 6 to 13. So because it's getting bigger from your x to your y, you would technically be multiplying. So that helps if you ever have to write your equation. With this one, from x to y, we're going from 3 to 1.5, from 5 to 2.5, from 7 to 3. And so because it's getting smaller from your x to your y, that'll be division, because whenever we divide, the number gets smaller. Okay, so that would not be multiplication, and that helps, like I said, whenever you have to write your equation. So you'll be doing your x divided by 2 to get to your y. Okay, so that's how we know whether it's division or multiplication, because it either gets bigger or smaller. All right, let's keep going. All right, this time we're given an equation. This says y equals 9x plus half. All right, so you should notice this extra piece after your x. Okay, so plus 1/2. That is called a constant. And whenever you have a constant, that means that your equation is not proportional. Okay, so if you have that extra, either plus half or minus half, after your variable, which is x, then that'll be not proportional. Just so you know, this is a slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b if you watch the video. Okay, but if you have that extra piece, that is not proportional. For this one, y equals 3/4 x, we don't have that constant after the x, and so that makes it proportional because we don't have that extra piece. Okay, now we have to see whether the graph is proportional. Well, remember, if a graph is proportional, that means it goes through the origin and it's linear. Linear means a straight line. So this is a straight line, but it does not go through the origin. It would have to cross the origin to be proportional. So this is not proportional because it does not go through the origin. Okay, let's move on to number 2. It says determine the constant of proportionality in each of the problems below. Okay, so they want us to see the constant of proportionality of this equation. If you look at your notes, I said it can also be the coefficient, which is the number before the x. And so the number before the x is 1.5. Okay, so it was just that easy, just to look for the coefficient or the number before the x. Okay, so 1.5 would also work if you wanted to change it into a decimal. All right, so the constant proportionality, remember what we do when we have a table is we pretty much take those numbers and divide them. Okay, so we're going to do y divided by x. So it's going to be 190 divided by 2, and you should get 95. Okay, so it's going to be 95. And then you would pretty much do that to all of them and see if you get the same thing, which you should. And so it's going to be a constant, or the number that I keep on using, which is 95. Okay. All right, this one says a restaurant has an all-you-can-eat buffet. They charge $13.95 per person. Okay, from your notes, I said it can also be the answer you get when you find one of something. Well, per means one. Okay, that'll be $13.95 for one person. And since that's already for one person, this would be my constant of proportionality. So it's going to be $13.95. Okay. All right. So we have to determine it for a graph. The main thing you want to do with the graph is make sure you take a point where it is at the intersection. Okay, so I cannot use what it is for x equals 1 because this is not an intersection. It's not at a cross. But I can use where it is at x equals 2. Okay, because that's an intersection. For 3, I can't use it because it's in between. It's not an intersection. But I can use it for x equals 4. Okay, so I can use either of these since I know it's proportional because it's linear and it goes with the origin. So I'm going to use this one just because of smaller numbers. But if you wanted to use this one, you can use this one as well. And just remember, you're just doing y divided by x. So your y, or the one on the y-axis for this point, would be 150. Divided by its x on this axis, which is 2. And so 150 divided by 2 is going to be 75. And that'll be your answer. Okay. Okay, number 3 says to complete the table below, use the information to answer A through C. Okay, so we have to fill out this table first. Okay, they gave us 2 numbers, and so just like I usually do whenever I get a table is I take them and divide them, what I have. Okay, and you want to see what is the number that they keep using. So take 10.5 divided by 3. Just so you know, your X will always be on the left side and your Y will always be on the right. It is always in alphabetical order. So it'd be X and then Y. If it was top and bottom, your X would be on top and your Y. Okay, so it'll always be alphabetical. Even if they don't put the X and Y there for you, you should already know that. Okay, so we're going to do our Y divided by X. So it's going to be 10.5 divided by 3, and you should get 3.5. And then you want to see if that works for this one as well. So go ahead and divide them. 17.5 divided by 5, and you should get 3.5. So because of that, I'm just going to use 3.5 for all of them. So I'm just writing them in between so that I know. Okay, and then like before, you want to see if you're multiplying from X to Y, or are you dividing? Well, from 3 to 10.5, I get bigger. From 5 to 17.5, I get bigger. So you are multiplying because the number got bigger. So we are multiplying for all of them. Okay, then you're actually going to go ahead and multiply. So 0 times 3.5 is 0. 1 times 3.5 is 3.5. And then you'll keep on going. Okay, so this is what you should end up with when you use your constant. Okay, all right, so now you can answer your questions. It says, after how many hours will the amount of rainfall be 28 inches? So they want the rainfall to be 28 inches. So what you're going to do is you're going to plug it in to your table. Now you got to see whether you're going to plug it into the left side or the right side. Well, it said rainfall is 28, so you want to put it in with rainfall. Okay, so you got your 28. You want to know how many hours that is. So that means we are going from our Y to our X. So before we were going from X to Y, we were multiplying to get to the Y. This time we're going backwards in reverse. So we're going to do the opposite of what we did before. So that means to divide, because the opposite of multiplication is division. So you're going to divide by the same number to go backwards. Okay. So we're going to take our time and do 28 divided by 3.5. If you do that, you should get 8. And so the answer is going to be 8 hours. Okay. B says write an equation to represent the rainfall. Well, just like I tell my students in class, you will always start off with Y equals. The reason why is because Y is your dependent variable all the time. And so it depends on whatever happens with the X. So make sure you always start off with Y equals. If they have X equals, then they would be wrong because they're trying to say X is dependent and it's actually independent. So always start off with Y equals. And then you'll put your constant of proportionality, which is the number you constantly use, which is 3.5. And then you'll end it off with X, and that'll be it. Okay, and what that means is you keep on multiplying your X by 3.5 to get to your Y. So that's what that means. All right, C says if it continues at this rate, how many inches of rain will fall after 6 hours? Okay, so 6 hours, they want to plug in 6 to our table. So we have to see whether it's going to go on the left side or the right side. Well, it says 6 hours, so it must go on a side with hours. And this time we're going this way. Okay, when we're going this way, we multiplied 3.5, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, so this time we're going the regular way. We're not going backwards. You multiply that, so 3.5 times 6, you should get 21. So it's going to be 21 inches. Okay. All right, number 4 says an app developer projects that he will earn $20 for every 8 apps downloaded. Write an equation to represent the proportional relationship between the number of apps and the total earnings. Okay, so one like this, they have what it is for every 8. I want to know what it is for 1. That's your goal. Okay, is to find what it is for 1 of something, like your note said. And the way you do that is you take your 2 numbers in your problem and you divide. So it's going to be 20 divided by 8, and you should get, when you do it, 2.5. Okay, and so they want you to write an equation. So we always start off with y equals, because if they do x equals, it's not right. So y equals, and then my constant proportionality, which I just found what it is for 1. So 2.5, and then you end it off with x, and that's it. Okay. All right, number 5 says it takes Esther 12 minutes to ride a roller coaster 4 times. Write an equation to represent the proportional relationship between the number of rides and the total amount of time. Okay, so same thing. I want to figure out what it is for 1 of something, not 4. So take those 2 numbers and divide. So it's going to be 12 divided by 4, which is 3. Okay, so that's my constant proportionality. So I can write my equation. Always start off with y equals. Put your constant proportionality, which is 3, and then put your x. Okay, so that means you would multiply your x by 3 to get to your y every time. All right, number 6 says use the table below to write an equation to represent the constant of proportionality. We already know how to do a table by now, which is just to take each of them and divide. Okay, so we're going to do 64 for the first one, divided by 4. If you do that, you get 16. Then you'll look at the other one and try it. So it'll be 112 divided by 7. You should get 16. And you will keep on getting 16 if you did finish it. And then you want to see, okay, am I multiplying by 16 or dividing by 16 to get from my x to my y? Well, it's getting bigger, so you would be multiplying. And then wants you to write an equation, so it's going to be y equals, because we always start off with y equals, not x equals. And then your constant, or the number you keep on using, is 16, and then x. Okay, so that means you would keep on multiplying your x by 16 to get to your y. That's what that means. Okay. All right. Number 7 just gives us a graph, and we're going to have to write the equation as well. Remember, you want to find one that you can use that is at an intersection or a cross. So you can't use what it is for x equals 1, because that's not at a cross. You can use what it is at x equals 2, because it's at an intersection or a cross. You can't do 3, but you can do 4. Okay, and then you just go see. And then you just pick one point, because it is proportional. So just pick one point and do your y divided by your x. So I'm going to pick the smaller one. This one, that's at my lowest point. And so y divided by x. And so my y on the y-axis is going to be 50. And then my x for that point is 2. And so you would do 50 divided by 2, which is 25, meaning your constant proportionality is 25. So now you got to do your equation. So y equals, and then your constant proportionality was 25, and it's going to be x. Okay, so that just means you multiply your x by 25 every time to get to your y. Okay. Okay, so number 8 says write an equation to represent the write a situation to represent the equation y equals 5x. Okay, so they are multiplying, so you just want to make sure you use something that means multiply. So per means multiply. Okay, so all I wrote was at the store the cost is $5 per shirt. So for every shirt that I buy, which is X, I have to pay $5. That's what that means. Okay. All right. Number 9 says that Donnie sells beach towels for $12.50 each. Write an equation to represent this situation. Well, each means one. Okay, it's for each. And so I already have what it is for one of something. So that means that this is my constant of proportionality because it's for one. So I can go ahead and write my equation, which is y equals, the constant of proportionality is 1250, and then x. Okay. All right. Number 10 says Margie saves $7.25 of her allowance each week. Write an equation to represent this situation. So each, again, means for one, and so that means this is already my constant of proportionality because that's what it is for 1 week. So it's going to be y equals, and the number is 725, and then x. Okay, the last one says write a situation to represent the equation y equals 0.5x. Just so you know, these ones are, it could be whatever you want it to be as long as it matches the equation. So what I wrote is it costs 50 cents for each gumball you buy at the mall. Okay, and so that is what it is for 1. So that does match. And it's 50 cents, so that'd be 0.50 or 0.5. And so that does match my equation. But whatever you write, as long as it matches, it's fine. Okay? All right. It says use the graph to answer the questions below. Okay, so write an equation to represent y, which is the number of miles traveled on x number of gallons of gas. Okay? So we're just going to find a point that we can use. We can't use what it is for x equals 1, right? Because it's not an intersection. Actually, it looks like we can. It is at an intersection. So I'm going to use it. Okay, but like I said, it doesn't matter which one you use as long as it is at an intersection. So if you wanted to use this one, you could, or this one. Okay, but I'm going to use what it is for 1. And so it's going to be y over x. So my y is going to be 25. And my x is 1 because that's the number that's between 0 and 2, even though it's not marked. Take those and divide. So 25 divided by 1 is 25. So that is my constant of proportionality. So my equation will be y equals 25 and then x. Okay. All right. It says how many gallons of gas are necessary to travel 350 miles. And what you're going to do is you're going to plug this number in to your equation. That's how you find out what it is for a specific amount. Okay. The only thing is you have to know whether it's going to be plugged in for your y or is it going to be plugged in for your x. And so read the problem again. They said that the y represents the number of miles. So obviously, we're going to plug it in for our y. So where the y is, I'm going to put my 350 equals 25x. Okay? Just so you know, your x represented the number of gallons of gas, and so we didn't plug it in for our x. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to solve for your x, or get your x by itself. Okay, so the way I do that is I put a line on the equal sign, get rid of the 25 because you want to get x by itself and isolate it. So they are multiplying right now, so we are going to divide by that number. Okay, this cancels out, so x equals, then you would do 350 divided by 25 and you will get 14. Okay, so the answer will be 14 gallons. Okay. All right, number 14 says write an equation to represent y, the number of cupcakes that can be baked in X hours. Just make sure you know and read the tables, okay? Because sometimes they will have an extra piece of information. For example, this is this y-axis represents the number of cakes in dozens, and just so you know, dozens, that would be 12, okay, for each. So we're going to write our equation, but first I have to find my constant proportionality. So just take 1 point and then do y divided by x. Okay, so I can't do what it is for x equals 1, but I can do x equals 2. So it's going to be y divided by x. So y divided by x. My y is 6 and my x is 2. Okay, for this point. And so divide that. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So my constant proportionality is 3. So I'm going to do 3, but I got to remember that this is in dozens. So what I'm going to do is take this 3 and multiply this by 12 because it's 3 dozen, right? So 3 times 12 is 36. So this is the number I'm going to use when I write my equation. So it's going to be y equals, and then 36, because that's what it is in dozens, x. Okay, that is my answer. Okay, it says, in this situation, what does the ordered pair 4, 12 mean? Okay, well, 4, 12, my 4 represents the x-axis, which is where I go first. And so that is 4 hours, 4 hours, in 4 hours, 12, okay, 12 dozen. And that is the number of cupcakes. So in 4 hours, 12 dozen cupcakes will be made. That is what that means, okay? Okay, your last page. All right, a couple things that I want to go over is this last page deals with non-proportional relationships, okay? So a couple notes before we do the rest of these problems, just so you know, on your test, a few of them will be non-proportional relationships where you have to do stuff like this. Most of it is proportional, which is the stuff we've been doing. But I just want to go over this because you will have a few questions that deal with non-proportional relationships. Okay, so the equation for non-proportional relationships will be y equals mx plus b, which should not be new if you were watching your videos. Okay, especially the one on remote learning day. Okay, the easy one is the B. Let's go over the B. The B is your y-intercept, or where the line crosses the y-axis is the y-intercept. Okay, this is also where your x equals 0. So if you're given a table, you just look where x equals 0 and look for the y. That is your y-intercept. Okay, so this just represents the number used for your y-intercept. And the other one we need to go over is your m, which is just your change. That triangle means change. So it is your change in y divided by your change in x. And I'll show you what I'm talking about when I do a problem, okay? And non-proportional, you can recognize it because it has a constant or an extra piece, okay? If you remember from the beginning of this review, the one that had that constant, that extra piece after the x, that was non-proportional. That was an example, okay? So we're going to practice using this equation. Okay. All right. So number 21 says, at the baseball field, a bag of candy is $2.50 and a bag of popcorn is $4.25. Roman is planning to purchase 3 boxes of candy and X bags of popcorn. Write an equation to find Y, which is the total price Roman must pay. So whatever you want to find, that's what you start off with. So we're finding Y, which we should know anyways. We always start with Y. But even if they change the letter, whatever we're trying to find is what we start off with. So it's going to be Y equals. Okay. All right. We want to see which one goes with X. Well, they said that X is the bags of popcorn. So the number that goes with X is the one that represents bags of popcorn. So it's going to be 425. So it's going to be 425X because they represent bags of popcorn. Okay. And then it's going to be plus. All right. Then we have 3 boxes of candy. Okay. So we have 3 boxes of candy, and then each candy is $2.50. And so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply 3 by $2.50 because that represents the bag of candy. Okay. I'm technically right now. The only thing I want to do is just take care of this solution right here. Okay. So I'm going to end up multiplying 3 by $2.50 to see exactly what that is. So it's going to be, rewrite it, Y equals 425X, which is good to go as it is. Plus, and then we're going to do 3 times $2.50, which is going to give you $7.50, and that will be our final answer. Okay. And so our constant really would be 750, or our y-intercept would be 750. This would represent our change in y divided by change in x. That would be the answer once you did that. Okay, so that's kind of what that means. And that is an example of non-proportional because it has that extra constant. Okay. All right, number 22 says a bike shop sells bikes for $155 each and scooters for $65 each. Write an equation to represent the cost of 2 scooters and X number of bikes. Okay, so we're going to start off with y equals, and then see which number goes with our X, which is the number of bikes. So the one that represents the number of bikes is 155. So it's going to be 155 going with our X because that's for bikes, plus, and then you have 2 scooters. That is $65 each, so multiply that by 65. Okay, and so just take care of this calculation, 2 times 65. So we're going to rewrite it. Y equals 155x, which is good to go as it is, plus multiply 2 times 65, and you will get 130. Okay. All right, it says complete the table below so that it satisfies the equation y equals 0.25 x plus 3. Okay, all you do is you plug in the x's because that's what they gave you. Okay, so you'll plug in, for example, it'll look like this for 0. So let's do it here. Y equals 0.25, and then I'll plug in my x that I was given, so 0. And then plus 3. And what you would do is solve this and to get your y. So you would do 0.25 times your x, which is 0, plus 3, and you will get 3. And that's what you would do for all of your problems. So I'll just write another one just so you can see. So it'd be y equals, use that same equation, 0.25. This time your x is 2, so plug in your 2 where the x is, and then plus 3. So you would solve that out. So you would do 0.25 times 2, and then plus 3. If you do that, you will get 350. Okay, and then you would do that for all of them. So this is what you would end up with. Okay, so all you do is you plug in your x. All right, number 24 says write an equation to represent the table below. Okay, so this one is where I'll come into contact with having to do this, use this equation and the definitions that go along with it. So, all right, I noticed this is not proportional because if I try to get the same number, I get different ones. Okay. All right, so I'm going to use my form. All right, the easiest